speaking about doing things early on, like building trust, it's really about building a culture of collaboration. Culture really is a creation. It's a dialectic between the people of the community. And one of the beauties of new worshiping community, something that I personally enjoy, is that you get to start something new. You get to create something new. So one of the things that I want to encourage you and really have you think through is, how do we create a culture of collaborative leadership into the DNA, into the fabric of your new worshiping community? The way in which we did it here at 4 Points was that from the very beginning, we started with a team, a core team. Some of us were quote unquote pastoral staff, others were volunteer partners, but we started with a team. And one of the things I just want to share about even the pastoral staff that we started with, for a small church like ours that had no more than 15 people gathering, we had 4 people on staff as pastors. And the way in which we did that was each person chose and willingly decided to be a part of this because we wanted to help fulfill the call and the vision. And one of my personal DNAs was that I never wanted to start anything by myself. I wanted to always have a team with me. So I had a team of a worship director and 2 other associates and myself. And we all worked together from the very start, from the very get-go of 4 Points as a team, as a collaborative team, where we sat down, we worked through ideas, we worked through vision, we worked through our ministry strategies, we worked through how we were going to communicate and really cultivate our small fledgling church at that time. What's also really interesting, though, is that something that I take great pride in is, as I mentioned earlier in one of the other modules, is that we were supported and launched out by our mother church, and they did support us financially. And theoretically at that time, I probably could have taken a pretty significant amount for a new worshiping community pastor for myself, but what we all did intentionally from the very beginning is we split the pot. And it wasn't very much, but we split the pot 4 ways. And we split the pot 4 ways because we all wanted to symbolically and really literally tell each other, we're in this together, we're gonna do this collaboratively. And oftentimes, finances actually tell the real story. And so when we split the pot, it was a symbolic, powerful, meaningful way in which we set the culture from the very beginning of 4 Points that we're going to have collaborative leadership. And so we started as a team of 4 pastors plus our spouses plus another group of attendees or partners or whatever you want to call it. And we worked collaboratively as we began 4 Points. And this collaboration has been part of our DNA from the very beginning, and it's still manifesting right now. And it's really one of the things I'm most proud of our church is how we work collaborative together as a team. Pastoral, our board, our congregants, our partners, we all work collaboratively in terms of leading the church together.
And so, just to be clear, splitting the pot actually does not give anybody even a quarter or a fifth or a sixth of what they would need to live on. We don't talk much about the actual nuts and bolts of finances very often, but this means a generous gift from a host church split 4 ways really only amounts to several $1,000s each. And so this multivocational
Several
approach,
$1,000s each?
Well, did you say 50?
Less
than that. Okay, excellent. Glad we clarified that.
Because we had to use it for other stuff, right?
Okay. So this team of 4, in establishing even the pay was going to show a collaborative leadership style. Also then lived on less than a couple of $1,000s each in terms of the income that they were receiving. In terms of collaborative leadership, Rise Community Church is led by Maisha Handy. She is the provost at Interdenominational Theological Center here in Atlanta. And she's also a really dynamic new worshiping community leader. The Rise Community Church is a group of largely 20 and 30 somethings, generally immersed in hip hop. They're generally very creative, artistic types. They actually started their entire church with flash mobs all over Atlanta, and it was fun. They did a flash mob at our Presbyterian meeting that nobody knew was coming, and except for the executive presbyter, and this was a lot of fun. But what they do is they have a leadership council that they call a minister's council. And there are 0 people in their entire church who are paid for any part of their roles with the church. Nonetheless, they are now about a church of 60, 80 people on your average Sunday, and they do meet face to face. But the way they plan, the way they lead, and the way they worship is all done collaboratively. In a way, they function like a jazz ensemble that has been together for a while, even though this is a new community. They meet monthly as a minister's council there. Because no person is the paid person, everybody takes the same sense of responsibility and ownership. And there's no sense that that person should do a little bit more and that person should do a little bit more. Now, they're intentionally modeling their church life after Letty Russell's Church in the Round. This is a book that she wrote and published. I have actually worked with and talked with a number of churches that are trying on this Church in the Round model. It's an interesting book. It's not for everyone, but this is another way of leading collaboratively. Every single person there has a different role. The entire church is led by different volunteers, and the ways that the responsibilities flow shift back and forth and happen through conversation. Even in the worship service, there is a note at the top of their bulletin that says, we call our worship service the flow. And what we look for in this worship service is that moment when we know the Holy Spirit is moving and we are in the flow. And then, because this is a note in the bulletin, it says, as a result, this order for worship may change at any time. And in fact, one Sunday, shortly after the ICE raids here in Atlanta, where there were a tremendous number of families disrupted and people taken from their homes. In the middle of worship, a little child got up. She was maybe 9, I don't know for sure, but she just stood up and she felt like she had the permission of this community to do so. She stood up at the end of a song and she said, I want this community to know that that could be me. I could be one of those kids who was taken. And I think we should pray right now for all the families and all the kids who were taken and for everybody who is so scared and hurting right now. And then, on the left side of the sanctuary, as you're looking toward the front, another older man stood up and said, this is just like the Underground Railroad. This is our story. Or at least it's a story very close to ours. We should stop. We should pray. We should break into groups. We should talk about what we can do and how we can be there as people who know what this feels like and who have had it in our history and who will not stand by and let this happen to others. And this worship service changed on a dime. The whole sermon went from this plan to a different plan. The music, the prayer time, it refocused. And this collaborative leadership style that they have been intentional about laying in from day one, where people truly are empowered, it's not for everyone. And Church in the Round and the way they live into it is not needed by all communities. But it is one of the ways that they are claiming the power of collaborative leadership, of co-creation and community, of permeable boundaries about who does what, and the way they are claiming that we trust each other and that we are a community of Christ and we will lean in together. We will make decisions together. We stand with one another. A little child felt permission to come up from the community and speak. We have several others throughout this nation, throughout our denomination, that actually function in a Church in the Round model, but that's not the model that's needed or even required for strong collaborative leadership. Instead, one of the things that's also really key is how the people at the top, be it 1 leader or 4 leaders or 2 leaders or however the most central leaders of your community act, really sets the tone for the leadership style that will be embodied, that people will really understand that they get to live into.
If I can speak into that just for a moment, there are challenges as you get a little bit larger. Now, when we started with, 6, 7 people in an apartment, then grew to 15, then grew to 25 and so forth, it was really easy for us to have collaborative leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But now we are bordering a medium-sized church, roughly about 300 people. It's a lot more challenging for us to have collaborative leadership. That being said, it's the principle. So in a church like ours, we probably can't do a church in the round, but the principle of collaborative leadership still permeates because it was part of our DNA. It's part of our creative culture. If I can just share a recent story of how collaboration takes place, we are trying to launch a initiative, for lack of a better term, as a church. We are wanting to go through this series called Emotional Healthy Spirituality. Mm-hmm. And we want to do it as an entire church. So I talked it over with my pastoral staff, then we talked it over with our board, then we talked it over with our small group leaders and what have you. And we're trying to get just clarity. We're trying to get perhaps insight that we may not have, that we're maybe missing something from our group. And so we got that and we thought we were doing it well, but what we realized that we still had blind spots that we did not see. So the way in which we still maintain collaborative culture is that a couple of small group leaders reached out to me and say, hey, we appreciate and we like where we're headed, but there are some concerns that we have, some questions that we have. Did you think about these things? We said, absolutely. We did not. Please share with us. Let us know. And we made an entire pivot as an entire church. We pivoted, and then we actually empowered them and said, you guys are bringing up some amazing ideas and thoughts. Would you mind spearheading this? Would you mind partnering with the pastoral staff and our board to help really execute this? Mm-hmm. So it looks different for us as a 300-person church than it did when we were 25.
Sure.
But the principle of collaboration and exactly what you said, the people, quote unquote, in the position of influence, what are we doing to cultivate collaboration? Mm-hmm. Giving a safe space, inviting people to come and participate in the life and the direction of the church.
When can people, and when and how, can people really weigh in on matters of substance? I mean, some of our communities are, 12 people. Others are 120. Others are, we're all different. The principle goes beyond the numbers. It matters if you have a 12-person group or a 500-person group. So collaborative leadership is not just about structure or about the allocation of responsibility. It's about the posture and the way of being of the key people who are seen as the primary leaders of the community. One of the keys to success, no matter the size of your community or the personality of your community, I think it is something that Nelson Mandela talked about a lot. And he talked about leading from behind. And Nelson Mandela, he was the former president of South Africa and the legendary leader and fighter against apartheid. And he wrote that a great leader stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go out ahead, whereupon the others follow, not realizing that all along they are being directed from behind. This may very well be the best way to unleash potential and to unleash people's creativity and enthusiasm for all that God wants to do through your new worshiping community. This doesn't mean an abrogation of responsibilities of the leader. It really means discerning how God is calling a community to be in relationship with one another. Because the postures and the ways of being and how we are with each other are often just as great a witness, if not more, than what we actually do. So we're not asking anybody to not lead or to put aside some duties that really are this person's responsibility or that. What we're hoping for, what we're wanting to pass on to you, that we have seen in our conversations with so many new worshiping communities across the United States, is that the flourishing communities really are focusing in on how to up their collaborative leadership game.